Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me. And I am here for a optimization video blog on and live stream here on Twitch. I am going to be opening my first episode of a series that I will be doing in an ongoing fashion, probably about once every couple of weeks. And this series that I'm going to be doing is a Dungeons and Dragons character optimization series called Gish Optimized, which will focus on the kind of Dungeons and Dragons characters that I love to build, the Gish. And apparently Crow here seems to like the Gish quite a lot as well, because apparently he wants to sit in my lap while I'm talking about optimizing Dungeons and Dragons Gishes. Now, for this episode, I'm going to be talking about how I like to optimize the dexterity-based paladin, or the Dexadin. But before I get into that, I would like to talk a little bit about the Gish. Now, the Gish it's an old term. It's something that those of us who are nerdy Dungeons and Dragons players who have played Dungeons and Dragons for upwards of 40 or more years, like I have, which, of course, I'm dating myself, but it's a term that many of us have tended to use to describe a certain type of player character in Dungeons and Dragons. And so what is a Gish, and who specifically do we have to blame for the Gish? And in a word, it is this guy, this Githyanki, which is an entirely original race to Dungeons and Dragons, created with the publication of the original Fiend Folio way back in 1981. The Githyanki are a race of humans that were subjugated by mind flayers. They remained under this tyrannical subjugation by the Illithid, also known as mind flayers, for many centuries. And under this tyrannical rule, they over time developed both powerful magics, powerful mind magics in the form of psionics, and amazing skill with weapons, particularly their special silver swords. And under the rulership of the Mind Flayers, they became a terror through the astral sea. But this did not last. A ruler of the Githyanki, called Gith, also the progenitor for a splinter race called the Githzerai, led a great rebellion against the Mind Flayer and overthrew their rule, and hence the Githyanki and the Githzerai races were born, and the Githyanki in particular are of interest as it relates to Gish, because there was a subgroup of Githyanki called Gish that specialized in both fighting and slinging spells. And they were called Gish, and they were very, very good at both fighting and laying down the heat with magic. And so Gish became kind of a famous term for mixing sword and sorcery. And so this is kind of an original term to Dungeons and Dragons, but it's something that happens throughout fiction. If you're a regular reader of fiction, many of the protagonists in fantasy fiction use both swords and magic. You could argue that the Jedi, for example, are Gish. Now, Gish started out specifically referring to fighter mages, but over time, the term evolved to include, at least in my opinion, to include the use of any kind of magic to enhance swordplay. So in second edition Dungeons and Dragons, this included fighter clerics and druid rangers and even bards, which, well, for advanced Dungeons and Dragons, particularly bards were seriously powerful Gish. So, so the term became more generalized to include just mixing fighting with magic of various kinds. And so for this particular blog, I am going to share with you my dexterity-based paladin build that I'm using for a game that is going to be streaming regularly here on Twitch. It's one that's run by my friend Ted Burgess. It's Battlestorm Online, so you can see me using this build in practice and decide for yourself whether or not you like it. So moving on a little bit here. So my character's name is Morgan Schnee, um, and I'm going to share with you my build for her. And I think of her as a stab and smite kind of Gish. There are many different kinds of Gish, in my opinion. There's the blast and bash Gish, which is more in line with your traditional Githyanki style Gish, hurling fireballs and laying down some serious smack with a sword or a powerful melee weapon. There's like another kind of Gish which is more available in 5th edition, which I like to think of as the tank and spank Gish, the kind of Gish that is more of like an explosive pinata who focuses on having high defenses, high hit points, but when they get hit, causing vicious retribution to their foes. And there are various other kinds of Gish that I am going to explore later, but particularly for the Dexadin, we are going to be looking at a stab and smite kind of character, a character that specializes in light weapons, in a has a lot of mobility, has a pretty decent level of survivability, but survivability is not the main trait of this particular kind of Gish. It's more so getting in, delivering the heat, and getting out, being able to focus fire when you really need it and turn on a kill switch to take down the big bad. Now, because this is a dexterity-based build, we aren't going to be leveraging some of the strongest features in Dungeons and Dragons for melee-based characters. And some of you are probably already groaning because no, we're not going to be using a polearm with the polearm master feat, which is an extraordinarily powerful combination. We're going to be looking at that in some future builds. And we're not going to be using a heavy weapon like a great sword or battle axe, or I'm sorry, great axe or a maul, in combination with the great weapon master feat, which is also one of the best ways to get heavy damage for a melee styled character. We're going to be focusing on one of the best weapons for dexterity based characters. We're going to be focusing on the rapier, and we're going to be focusing on optimizing the rapier for a dexterity based paladin. Now, as far as optimization goes, I'm not going to get too crazy with the optimization, but what we are going to do is leverage some of the synergistic tricks that we can weave into a traditional paladin build to make the rapier really shine and to give you, well, a bit more stab for your money, so to speak. So moving right into level 1, let's just go back to basics here and start with stats. So what kind of stats are we looking at for our stab and smite Dexadin here? And in particular, our main stat is dexterity. So we're going to throw 9 points into dexterity, which will give us a 15 starting out without our racial bonus. And this is key because dexterity is really the center of this build. It keys into the notion that we're a quick melee fighter. It gets us to the line fast in the form of a higher initiative, and it's going to be adding to hit and damage to our main weapon, which is the rapier. For our second ability, we could certainly emphasize Constitution, and there are many who probably will want to do this. For us, or at least for me, for my Dexadin, I'm going to be leaning a little bit more toward Charisma. Charisma is such a potent ability for paladins. It keys into their spell casting. It keys into a secondary buff both for yourself and for your party in the form of your aura of protection, which you'll get at level 6. And it also adds a lot of RP juice, giving you the ability to, talk your way through a situation if you need to, or portray your character as a magnetic type within the world environment. And for myself, for Morgan Schnee, I'm looking more for a character that has a bit of that magnetism. With our group, we certainly do have a number of charismatic player characters in the group. So I'm not necessarily going for party face, but I do want a character that's going to be able to shine in social environments in her own right. So number 2 is going to be Charisma, and we are also going to go ahead and dump 9 points into Charisma, giving us a 15 starting stat for Charisma. So we did talk about Constitution, and we don't want to completely neglect Constitution. Constitution is what keeps us alive in a lot of cases. It ties into our hit points, and it's also very key for concentrating on spells. And because we're a Dexadin and we're going to rely a lot on spell buffs, we're going to want to have a decent Constitution so that our concentration checks are pretty good when we do get hit. So for Constitution, we're going to go ahead and throw 7 points into Constitution for 14, leaving us with just 2 points left over for Strength, Intelligence, and Wisdom. And I'm going to go ahead and throw the last 2 into Intelligence. You guys can do what you want. I'm dumping Strength, and I'm dumping Wisdom. I don't know, a lot of people dump Intelligence for Paladins, and certainly that's kind of a standard thing. And then, yeah, I mean, dumb Paladin is kind of a cliche. Don't get me wrong, 10 Strength isn't like, Einstein level. I'm sorry, 10 Intelligence is not like Einstein level intelligence. But I don't know, for some reason, for me, playing a real meathead kind of character is a little bit anathema. I like to at least have some plausible deniability for coming up with clever tricks, and I feel that I'm more at liberty to do that playing a 10 intelligence character than an 8. Now, with an 8 wisdom, that just generally means that my character is going to notice things a little less, be a little bit less perceptive, a lot less insightful, and this might work out well with your party because, while we're playing a paladin, the other characters might be doing various things that may be morally kind of in a gray area, and if you have a lower wisdom as a paladin, you could plausibly say that, oh, well, my character just didn't notice what the rogue, for example, was doing at any given time. Right now, I'm just so you know, I'm not monitoring the chat, but I will take a look at the chat on Twitch and answer your questions when I'm done. I'm just gonna kind of run this through presentation style. So if you're hopping into chat and saying things, thank you very much. I will take a look and I will respond to that at the end. So to sum up, we start out with a 15 dexterity, a 15 charisma, a 14 constitution, a 10 intelligence, an 8 strength, and an 8 wisdom with our point buy. So this is an adventurer league legal type character, and that gives us our base for the character. Now, moving on to race. Race is pretty key for our Dexadin here. And you could take a lot of different races and do a lot of good with a Dexadin. One of the first that come to mind for me is the elf, and with a light weapon, taking the elven accuracy feat, you could really hand out some consistent and explosive damage, leveraging that extra accuracy and crit fishing. And I was really tempted to kind of go that way with the Dexadin that I'm building. But there are also some other really good options here. For example, you could also take the human and pick up a feat at first level. And we do have some wants for some feats to support our rapier use, and we'll get into that later. But it is really tempting to take variant human or to take the custom lineage option from the more recent additions to 5th edition, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, and to also start out with that feat right off the bat. But the way I feel about this, we're playing a Dexadin. I'm going to be playing a good character, a character that is essentially a good person at heart. And so I'm sure some of my choices for this good person at heart, as far as build, you guys might disagree with. But as far as race goes, I'm more leaning toward the Azamar and the Protector Azamar specifically. It synergizes extraordinarily well with Paladin, both in a roleplay kind of way, thematically, and also in a crunch kind of way in your statistics and the benefits that you get throughout the game. Now, in addition, the Azamar gives you a little bit of a punch when it comes to damage. It gives you a little bit of a kill switch. And because we are using a rapier as opposed to a great weapon or a polearm in combination with the polearm master feat, we want to try to optimize our damage to catch up and possibly, maybe in some instances, surpass in at least in small ways those highly powerful builds that you can use with a melee character. So, and getting the Azamar, we end up with the amazing ability at level 3, choosing a Protector Azamar, and I'll get into this a little bit more, to buff your melee strikes once on each of your turns with some extra radiant damage. And this scales, it raises up with your level, and this is something that we really want. It also gives us some added defense in the form of the Azamar's resistances, and it gives us some added mobility. And we're gonna talk about that a little bit more later, but we are going to go ahead and pick Azamar, at least for my build. You may disagree. Go ahead and hate me in comments or whatever. But I'm going to go ahead and pick Azamar, and that's going to give us 2 additional ability score bumps. It's going to give us a +2 to 1 ability score. We're going to use the optional rules from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything to put these in any ability score we choose, and we're going to get a +1 into 1 ability score we choose. So we're going to go ahead and throw the +2 into our dexterity. Now, why are we going to do that? We could we could have gotten a couple of extra more points if we just spent 7 on dexterity and threw 2 to get 16. But we're looking at a specific feat later on. It's what's called what some people call a half feat, because it gives you 1 point in the attribute, and then it gives you some special abilities. And so we're going to set ourselves up for this half feat later on in the build. So we want a 17 in dexterity with those 2 points, and then we're going to throw 1 point into charisma for a 16, and that is going to round out a lot of our starting choices with abilities and race for our Dexadin. Now, of course, for class, we are picking Paladin at first level. Spoiler for this build, we are going to go straight Paladin all the way through. Some of the other builds that I'm going to throw in for you are multi-class builds that leverage, but like various strengths from different classes. But a word on multi-classing, I honestly think that sometimes it's really overdone in 5th edition. And it's understandable because there's so much that is front loaded into the character classes. And that as characters advance, it can kind of seem like, their powers and abilities taper off. But in my experience, they really don't. Except for in specific cases. But generally speaking, what you get as you level is really solid with many of the classes in Dungeons and Dragons, and Paladin in particular is an extraordinarily solid class to go all the way through to 20. Again, there are exceptions. There are multi-class combinations that are really potent. There are little dips that can be crazy powerful. And I've certainly seen some builds that incorporate multiple character classes that are pretty insane, if very specific at what they do. But for this particular build, we're going to be picking Paladin, and we're going to be staying Paladin throughout. And we're going to be we're going to be adding our nuance through the subclasses, through the race, and through picking some tricks with feats that are really going to make this build shine. And I think those of you who are that are interested in a Dexadin, someone who's like nimble but really hitting hard, are going to like some of these tricks that we're going to bleed into it. So we pick Paladin at first level, and what do we get? We get our armor proficiency, where we get our proficiency in rapier, which is key. We get some ranged weapon proficiencies, which, because we have a high dexterity, is pretty important. But we're going to be focusing on melee. We get our shield. I probably mentioned the shield before. We get lay on hands, which is actually a really potent non-spell source of healing for both yourself and your allies. Of course, it comes at the cost of using an action, but when I find that when your friends are down, it's often best just to spend your action to bring them back, because if you have that added action economy of that player on the field, your chances of surviving are so much more. And as a paladin, you're an off healer, and you have that option of adding that force multiplier, if you will, to the battlefield. And also as an Azamar at level 1, this is of course not Paladin, but related to Paladin, you get Healing Hands, which is going to go ahead and give you another 1 point of healing, which at first level can be pretty substantial. But also from Paladin, you're going to get your signature enemy detector, Divine Sense, and so that's going to provide us with a good base for our Dexadin. So moving on, for our gear, we are going to go ahead and sell our chainmail for half price and buy scale mail instead. We're going to take a shield. We are going to take a rapier as our martial weapon, and we are going to take 1 dagger, and from our background we are going to buy at least a couple more daggers, because throwing a dagger at this level, especially at first level, a big part of your survivability is being able to plink away at things that are more powerful than you at range. And this certainly proved to be true with the earlier sessions of our Battlestorm Online campaign. Unfortunately, those earlier sessions were not recorded because we hadn't yet gotten the idea that we were going to do this on Twitch. But we did run into some very serious foes at level 1 and 2 that we were able to wear down with ranged attacks. So we're definitely don't want to neglect the daggers and throwing the daggers, which is as silly and as plinky as that may sound, is actually a really potent standoff at low level. So that rounds off level 1. We've set our stats. We picked our race, which is Azamar. We've picked our class, which is Paladin. And we've picked our basic gear. So moving on to level 2. This is the level where the paladin really comes into its own, and I can hear you guys saying it in the background. The core reason for this is Smite, and Smite is just so delicious. We get our Divine Smite, and we get our Paladin spells that power it. And this bumps us up. It makes us a more potent Dexadin. It gives us a little bit of a Nova capability against big bads. Although right now we are very short on ammo for our smites. We only have 2 spell slots to spend on them, so we need to keep in mind that we choose wisely, and it's very tempting just to blow those smites, particularly if you roll a crit against an enemy that may not be as important, but you're a paladin, and if you roll a crit, you kind of feel like you lose your paladin card when you fail to smite, even if it's kind of frivolous or superfluous to to the survivability of your group. And I've got to say that I'm guilty of doing this. It's just so tempting, but don't succumb to temptation, or if you do, it better really be worthwhile. So you get your smite, which is a big deal. But you also get something that's going to help us, at least based on our choices, based on our optimization choices. It's going to help us with consistent damage. We get our fighting style. And for our fighting style, we are going to pick Duelist. Now, Duelist is it's not flashy. It's not like, it doesn't scream like Smite. Oh my God, this is so badass. But it is kind of a beans and bullets kind of thing. That +2 to damage is going to grind down your foes. It is actually at this level a big buff to damage. We're going from 1 die 8 +3 on our rapier strikes to 1 die 8 +5. And though this is not going to pull us up on par with the heavier weapon wielders, it's going to get us close unless the great weapon fighter is taking that -5 to hit to get that amazing +10 on damage. But from my experience, and I'm sure from yours as well, those choices are sometimes hard to make. Declaring a -5 to hit can be the difference between hitting and missing, and that's a really severe debuff to take to your attack roll. So you better have a lot of things at play for your accuracy going in to take that -5 to hit with confidence. To add that +10 damage. So comparing a rapier versus a greatsword without the +10 damage, or a maul, or a glaive, or something like that, is really not that much difference. And in some cases, you're going to meet or even surpass the damage that is dealt. You'll be on the lower end of that consistent damage range, but that +2 does bump you up into the higher consistent damage types, even though you're kind of on the lower end here. So Duelist, though, generally also is going to add to the synergy of the damage that we do with the rapier. It's going to become a part of our suite of things that add to the damage of our rapier, and we are going to optimize that to the hilt for a single class, and that's a part of our optimization there. That +2, as small as it looks, it's important. Okay, so that's it for fighting style. Now, we did talk about smites, and one of the things that we do get at level 2 also are spells. And sorry, for some reason my audio on the headset just cut out. Sometimes this happens to me. I don't really know why. I need to learn to be a little bit more technologically savvy. We'll work on it. I'll put it on my list of things to do. But okay, so we were talking about spells, and spells for paladins at level 2 are pretty yummy. I mean, everyone's like, okay, I just want to use my spells for smites, and that's also a really good choice. But we're a Gish, and Gish use spells. Gish casts spells, and we can do a lot of things with these two paladin spell slots. They provide us with a lot of options. I mean, don't get me wrong, damage is damage, and damage is amazing, but paladin spells are also really damn good. And I'm not gonna, go into like all the spells I want to take with this build because I could just go on forever and ever. But at second level, I do want to talk about some really good choices. And it's kind of like getting just this nice access to this nice jar of, well, in this case, dice, because, all of us who play Dungeons and Dragons, we love the dice. But it's also kind of like getting a big jar of yummy jelly beans that we get to sample and taste from in certain fun combat situations. And oh, this is just so yummy. And so, okay, so let's talk about the spells that I want to take for my Gish optimization build for Dexadin. And the four that I'm looking at, because we have a 16 charisma, that's going to give us 3, and we are paladin level 2, and because we get half our paladin level as spells that we can choose, that's going to give us 1. And of course, since we are paladin, we can change these spells anytime we take a long rest. That's one of the benefits of being a divine caster, be it a paladin or a cleric. But the list that we're going to take include Divine Favor. I can hear the moans and groans starting, but we're going to talk a little bit about Divine Favor. We're going to take Cure Wounds because, I mean, healing is very important, and even though we're an off healer, we don't want to neglect that potential ability. If our allies are going down, we want to help our action economy by bringing them back. We're going to take Protection from Evil, and this is an oft neglected spell, but it is badass, and we're going to talk about why it is. And we're going to take Shield of Faith because, well, level 2, who doesn't want a +2 bonus on armor class for certain situations when we really need to tank, or if we're in one of those parties where we happen to be the only tank, but we're a Dexadin and we need that extra armor class. So, okay, let's talk about these spells more specifically. Starting with Divine Favor. Now, Divine Favor, in my opinion, is a seriously badass spell, and I've used it to good effect in numerous combat encounters. It's a little tricky. It's one of those things that you want to choose in certain situations and don't want to choose in other situations. And it's also one of those things where you can just lose it poof at a moment and be like, why didn't I just smite instead? So let's talk about the strengths and weaknesses of Divine Favor and when it's useful, when in the combat envelope it's useful to pop this thing, and when it's probably not a good idea. So first off, what does Divine Favor do? So as a bonus action, we can add an extra 1d4 radiant damage to each one of our attacks that hit. And that's actually a relatively big deal. It's going to shift our average damage on a hit from 9.5 because we're using a rapier and which is 1d8 and we're adding 5 from our bonuses to 12. And that may not sound like a lot, but it actually is at this level. Many monsters at this level that we encounter, that's going to be a one-shot kill, where a 9.5 might not be. So it might be more on the average range where you might one-shot kill 30, 20%, where if you're fighting a mob and you have Divine Favor, you'll be one-shot killing maybe 40 or 50% of the monsters you hit. Particularly if you happen to have hot dice. And everyone wants hot dice, I know. It's just hot. But okay, so that 2.5 is really adding to your consistent damage, and you're doing it as a bonus action. You're not burning your attack action to buff your attacks. You can just say, boom, Divine Favor and walk into that group of zombies, for example, where you really want to get that delicious extra radiant damage to prevent them from getting that zombie fortitude. And that's one example of where Divine Favor can really shine. Okay, so let's get a little bit into the detractors. So divine favor is concentration, and if you get hit, you're going to have to make a Constitution saving throw to maintain concentration, or you're going to lose it. And we want to keep divine favor for at least 4 rounds. So this gets into another one of the limitations of divine favor. We want to use it only in big combats that we think are going to last a long time. And here's the reason why. One, we're getting that consistent damage every round. And two, the total damage from divine favor is not really going to surpass a smite unless you hit about 4 times. So, I mean, that's not the only benefit of divine favor. Sometimes you're going to one-shot kill a creature because you had divine favor, and if you use smite, you would overkill. And so divine favor is also kind of in that nuanced situation where that extra damage helps you kill, but doesn't waste on overkill. And smite can often waste on overkill, so it's also one of those kinds of nuances that you want to look at when you use divine favor. The last nuance is that you probably will want to run your Dexadin in such a way that you're not drawing a huge amount of aggro when you're running divine favor. And this is also to prevent those Constitution saving throws. Now, of course, there's never a perfect world. You're never going to be able to just say, okay, I'm not going to draw aggro, but I'm going to be a melee frontline character. But you can limit your exposure by not, say, for example, just walking right into the middle of your enemies, kind of picking away at them more on the flank, or relying on your friends to also be a bastion, against the attacks that are coming in from the enemies. So being smart about your positioning is also key when you're running divine favor. But in my opinion, it's one of the best spells for a paladin at first level, at the first level spell slot list, and it gets better when you get to level 5 when you are making 2 attacks. All right, so enough about divine favor, and moving on to cure wounds. Now, I don't need to really say a lot about this. I've already talked about healing, but having that extra healing as backup on top of your lay on hands, which is 10, and on top of your healing hands from Azamar, which is 2, giving you a total of 12, plus cure wounds, actually makes you a pretty deep healer here. You're not going to out heal a cleric at this level that's focused on healing, but in some cases you're going to have more access to healing resources than a cleric or druid at level 2. So having that cure wounds to help your friends is actually a really big deal. So also moving on to protection from evil, I'm just going to say a few things about protection from evil, but yeah, and to include this, it is one of the most badass defensive spells that money can buy in the low level range, particularly against undead and fiends, because it gives them disadvantage to hit you. So you pop this spell. It is an action, so you are burning your action to do it, but they are disadvantaged to attack you on all attacks, and disadvantage is a major debuff. So if you are in a situation where the stuff is going to come at you hard and you're going to be tanking for your friends, protection from evil against undead and fiends is really a go-to. In addition, it provides some other riders. It prevents mind control from a lot of the really nasty mind control-y type creatures. And it does some other things that are situationally really good. But it's one of those spells that you want to have when you really need it. So protection from evil is going on our list. Last of all, we are taking Shield of Faith, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So Shield of Faith, like Divine Favor, is concentration. Also, Protection from Evil is concentration. I didn't say that, but it is, so you can still lose it. So Shield of Faith being concentration is a bonus action to activate, but it's really going to add to your tankiness against enemies. And because we are a Dexadin, we are about 1 armor class lower than your typical sword and board fighter. And that Shield of Faith is going to give us that edge back in certain situations. And I don't know. Oftentimes for me, if I'm choosing between Divine Favor and Shield of Faith, I'm taking Divine Favor because I like to do the damage and I'm confident about my positioning. But I can see where for other playstyles, or even for me in certain situations, I'm going to really want to take Shield of Faith instead. So that rounds out our spell choices for second level. Very important at low level. I know I've spent some time on spell choices. But at low level, these choices really matter. We're not going to go as much into spells as we level further, but we're going to talk about some more. So this rounds out our general build for level 2. Now, moving on to level 3. So this is where we really start to see our Dexadin build start to blossom. And the reason is because of the choice we get for our Paladin Oath. And there are lots of oaths that are really nice. I seriously considered the Glory Paladin for the Dexadin, and there are a lot of reasons for that. Um, but if we're looking at a Dexadin as an ultimate duelist kind of character, one that's really leaning into the role of stabbing and smiting their foes like we are, there is one oath to rule them all, and that is the Oath of Vengeance. And we share a toast to the Oath of Vengeance. Now, you might say, but Rob, you were saying that your Dexadin is a good person, and the Oath of Vengeance is really kind of gritty, more of a kind of like a Batman kind of play style. And for this, I'll just say that Oath of Vengeance can be pretty gritty, and but there are various shades, in my opinion, in the grit rainbow. And for me, for my build, I'm going to focus more on the vengeance aspect of the Oath of Vengeance here as kind of a righteous fury that comes into play almost like a rage, almost like a barbarian style rage that happens when my fellow players or characters are afflicted by evil, or when when the innocents suffer the same fate. It's this kind of like a furious anger with which to smite down the evil that sometimes may compromise the otherwise benevolent and kind morals of this character, because for her evil is such an offense. And when that happens, she declares her oaths against these foes as shouts of anger, as an outthrust sword bathed in radiant light. So I'm going to lean more into the righteous fury side of the Oath of Vengeance, and lean a little bit away from the Batman side for this particular character. Don't get me wrong, the Batman RP is really cool. It just doesn't quite feel right for this Dexadin. But nonetheless, we are taking Oath of Vengeance. And what does Oath of Vengeance give us? It gives us the wonderful thing that is the Oath of Enmity. And for us, this is really going to help us out with our damage output, again, particularly against big bads. And it's going to give us our kill switch. And our kill switch is going to be 2 parts at this level. But the Oath of Enmity is going to give us advantage against our sworn foe. We also get Abjure Enemy, which is situationally very good. It allows us to also point out a foe for divine retribution that either renders it immobile or slows it down considerably. And this is also situationally very good, but for the most part, we're going to be leaning on the Oath of Enmity, and the deliciousness that is advantage on attack rolls against big bats that it encompasses. For action economy, it's only a bonus action to declare your oath of enmity. So that's very quick. We can just boom, declare it, and then go to town with our rapier against our foes. Um, Now, the Oath of Enmity only gives us one half of our kill switch at this level. But at this level, since we are a paladin who can smite, we are a duelist who does an additional +2 on damage. We already have a good suite of damage options. With the Oath of Enmity, we add accuracy and crit fishing, and with the second part of our kill switch, the Azamar Protector's Radiant Soul, we get some extra radiant damage on top. So say, for example, we confront a big bad. And in Battlestorm Online, recently we had a Lamia that we were confronting at level 3. So what do we do on our first round? We have a high dexterity, so we have the added action economy of likely rolling a relatively high initiative. And this gives us not only the power of maneuver and possibly first choice for combat strikes, but it also gives us a early buff potential. And we are going to use that. We are going to roll decent on initiative, probably, hopefully, I don't know. Maybe we'll roll a 1. But even so, we come in, we see our big bad, and we decide that we want to turn on our kill switch. So we move in close enough to the big bad to declare our Oath of Enmity upon the big bad. And we use our action to activate Radiant Soul, which sprouts glowing wings from our back, giving us the ability to fly. And this added mobility is going to give us an extra chance, extra opportunities to deliver our strikes on our foe, which is critical, because if you're not able to get there to deliver, then your high damage is worthless, right? And it is going to give us +3 at this level radiant damage to 1 strike on each of our turns. So once this happens, what do we have? We have 1d8 damage from our rapier. We have +5 from our dexterity and our duelist. We have +3 from Radiant Soul for a total of +8. 1d8 +8, which is putting us now more so into the range of heavy damage dealers, to include great swords and polearm masters. And we have advantage, which makes us a crit fisher against this foe, and also more likely to land our hits, and smite, of which we have potentially 3. So we are a serious threat at level 3 on the battlefield, and we're just a little rapier wielder. And whoa, hold on, I mean, yeah, kind of badass. I'm not feeling what's the word? I'm not feeling insecure about this Dexadin right now. I'm not saying, man, I really wish I took, Great Weapon Master and Great Weapon as, just a regular standard strength-based paladin. I'm thinking, man, yeah, kind of badass. And not only that, I can fly over obstacles and get to the big bad and cause them pain. And as a paladin, that's my job. So level 3, this build really starts to come online, but there's more. Yeah, there is more. So we've gotten to level 3, and then we've gotten our kill switch, we've gotten our smites, we've gotten our duelist. We are really, really good at using our rapier, both at consistent damage, but more so in a Nova kind of harassment of big bad level foes. But we are also just on the cusp of all the things, all the wonderful things that this build can do. Because at level 4, we get our next ASI, or feat. And what are we going to choose? What are we going to choose for our ASI or feat? Now, we have a 17 dexterity. And one of the things that I am going to take, spoiler alert, for this build is the Piercer feat. And now would be a good opportunity to do that, but it would increase our dexterity to 18, giving us +4 and +4 to hit and damage just from our ability score with our rapier. It will give us a better initiative score. It will bump up our potential armor class with light armor, and it will bump our saves against many AoE attacks that will target the dexterity-based saving throw. But all of those wonderful things that come from the 18 dexterity and the piercer feat, which we'll talk about later, are something that we're just going to wait for, because there is something else that we want even more than all of these nice things. And the thing that we want is what I'm calling a Nova critical, or a Nova crit capability. Now, we've already got some of this because we are a paladin, and when we smite on a crit, that really explodes our damage, right? But we want to lean into that more. We want to be even more explosive on a critical. We are a Dexadin. We are an Oath of Vengeance paladin who can, crit fish. So we want to capitalize on this ability. We want to capitalize on our badass explosive nature with this little freaking rapier that we are going to blast huge holes, blast huge chunks out of our enemy with. And how are we going to do it? We're going to do something completely unconventional that I'm sure a lot of you guys are going to say, oh no, that's not possible. That's not according to the rules. And I'm going to argue with you, because I'm going to say, well, according to rules as written, it says that I can do this. And so what we are going to do is we are going to take the Great Weapon Master feat. What? What, you say? A Great Weapon Master? Hold on. You don't have a great sword. You don't have a maul. You don't have a glaive. Well, that's true. No, we just have a rapier. So what are we going to do with our Great Weapon Master feat? We're going to completely ignore the -5 to hit and +10 damage. That's for the big, weapon wielders. You can only do that when you're wielding a heavy weapon, right? But the nice little thing about Great Weapon Master feat is it is also just a weapon master feat. And why is that? The reason is because the wording, and I quote from the Player's Handbook, the first feature of the Great Weapon Master feat is this: on your turn, when you score a critical hit with a melee weapon, and I'm going to say that again, melee weapon, or reduce the creature to 0 hit points with 1, you may make 1 melee weapon attack as a bonus action. Nothing in that statement says anything about heavy weapon. Nothing says anything about greatsword. Nothing says anything about maul or glaive or whatever. So all of those great weapon wielders, those heavy weapon wielders running around getting this extra attack when they crit or kill, they could be doing it with also a longsword, a short sword, a dagger, a mace, a flail, a punji stick, I don't know. Anything that counts as a melee weapon, according to the rules as written, you can use with this feat. And so we are going to take it and we are going to use it with our rapier, because what's going to happen when we crit? We are going to smite, particularly when it comes to a big bad. And then we are going to have a bonus action attack to hit with our rapier again, potentially, and smite again. And this is what we are calling a Nova critical at level 4, right? So what does this look like? We turn on our kill switch. We are an Azamar. So we are going to have that extra radiant damage now bumped to +4. We are a duelist. We have a 13 dex. So that's going to be a total of 1d8 plus 9 damage just for the base attack. Then we are going to just assume that we crit, because this is just assuming that we do crit. And we'll just say for posterity that we are critting an undead or fiend, just to give you the full potential of this battle station of a rapier wielder that we've constructed. So what are we going to do when we crit? We're going to do 2d8 damage from the rapier for 9. We're going to do 6d8 damage from our smite. First level smite is 2d8, but bumps to 3d8 against undead and fiends. So we're going to do a total of 6d8, which is 27. That's a total of 36 damage plus 9 for 45. Single hit. And then we are going to bonus action attack. And we are likely going to hit him, the big bad or whatever he, she, they are. We're going to hit them again. And we are going to do 1d8 on the second smite. If we don't crit, we're just going to assume that we don't crit twice. We're not going to beg to be quite that lucky. But we're going to do 1d8 plus 3d8 because we're going to smite again. So that's for 18 plus another 5 for 23. Now, that's a total of 68 damage at level 4. Boom. Now, if you have Divine Favor set up, you're going to do another 10 for a total of 78 damage, just as an example. If you have Hunter's Mark, because, as a Vengeance Paladin, you get Hunter's Mark, you're going to do another 3 damage on top on average, because we're averaging damage here. So extraordinarily heavy Nova potential with this build, and whoa! And we're just using a Dexadin. We are just using a rapier. We are not using a greatsword. We are not using a glaive. Now, don't get me wrong. The consistent damage on this character is not likely to be as high as a greatsword wielder or polearm master. But what we have here is a nice, tasty little niche synergy where we have a character that is really good at Nova crits, has good consistent damage, has good defenses, relatively speaking, versus someone who is dropping a shield in favor of like the heavy weapon. And we've got a character who's a really good off healer that also has access to nice mobility options right now in the form of fly, admittedly limited to once a day, but still, when you need it, you need it. And when you do use it, especially if you choose well, it's really helpful. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty badass here. By level 5, we get even more badass because what do we get? We get extra attack. And so our Nova Critical now has 3 attacks coming from our first attack, which is a crit, the second attack, which is extra attack, and the bonus action attack that comes from kind of cheesing our Great Weapon Master with the rapier here to get that boom, boom, a little bit of extra attack. It just seems so cinematic to me to just have this like flurry of blows coming in from a rapier, just, a streak of light engulfing a brilliant point of a rapier here. This is what I'm imagining from our rapier Dexadin. And at level 5, we get it. We really get it. In addition, we get some extra spells. And I'm not going to talk too much about spells, but we get... I'm going to talk a little bit about the Oath of Vengeance spells, which are actually really darn good. And so we get Misty Step, which adds to our mobility, which we really want because we want to land those strikes, and we get Hold Person. Hold Person can really mess up a foe. It's one of those, it's a little bit of a niche spell. You want to throw it against folks that may not have the best wisdom saves, and you don't want to throw it up against a big bad who's got legendary resistances. But if you throw it against, like, say, for example, a giant or an ogre, I'm sorry, you can't do that because it's Hold Person, not Hold Monster. Mea culpa, the audio just cut out of my headphones again. So I was wrong. You can't do that yet. You have to wait till you get Hold Monster. But Hold Person, say against more of like a brutish humanoid personage type character, can be situationally really deadly for them. If they fail, they are paralyzed, which means all your attacks and your allies' attacks, so long as they remain paralyzed, are criticals if they occur from within 5 feet, which is just brutal. And it destroys their action economy. So situationally, really bad for the bad guys, whole person. But I like Misty Step even more. Misty Step I kind of think of as like BAMF, you spend a bonus action to teleport 30 feet to anywhere. And we really love mobility for this build. We like being fast. We like being able to teleport. We like being able to fly because it gets us in the enemy's face and lets us deliver on our promised rapier flurries. So I kind of imagine this character just kind of flitting around the battlefield in different ways and just causing pain to the enemy as they pounce in a very mobile and dexterous fashion. So yes, Misty Step adds to our pounce capability. So those are the major things that we are getting with level 5. We're getting some serious extra synergy. Now, if you want to read more about the builds, I'm going to throw a link into the chat afterwards. It's at Scribbler's Fantastical Workshop at WordPress. I'll go ahead and throw that out because I did write a larger blog on this build, and it probably goes more into depth. I wrote like way too many words, but if you have the time, it does go into even more detail. Now, for our Nova critical, it is worth noting that our maximum potential average damage for Nova crit at this level is 97.5, which is seriously brutal. Now, there are some builds that focus more on damage that can surpass this, but this is really in the top range of Nova critical strike builds, and for this level. I'm sorry, I was wrong. I'm going to have to post a revision. If it's 97.5 if you're not smiting and Nova critting on undeads and fiends. If you're Nova critting on an undead or a fiend, the average maximum damage is 115.5. So, and this is of course assuming you land all the hits. This is not specifically accounting for accuracy, but you're also pretty accurate. So these deliverable ranges of damage are pretty real for you. And 115.5 is, whoo, that's some heat. And this is just at level 5, so yeah, you're looking pretty good. And on top of all that, you've got 25 hit points of lay on hands. You've got 5 hit points of healing hands. You've got the ability to cure wounds if you want. So you're really still sitting pretty as an off healer. You've got 42 hit points at this level if you're taking average hit points. You probably got around a 19 armor class. Maybe you're still stuck at 18, but likely you're at 19. So the mix of abilities and the way they synergize are just extraordinarily strong for this class at level 5. You've really come into your own. At level 6, we pick up Aura of Protection, which is an awesome ally buff, and Crow really thinks so because he loves buffing his allies, especially with his soft paws, right? And but yeah, Aura of Protection, you're giving yourself and your allies within 10 feet +3 bonus on all saves, which is just really, really nice. And yeah, so you've just you just bumped your dexterity saving throw, for example, to +6, and you've just bumped your constitution saving throw to +5. So you're really loving the Aura of Protection for yourself and your allies who are standing there in your shield wall, say for example, they're really gonna love it too. So yeah, level 6. I don't really need to say too much more about level 6. Moving on to level 7, we get Relentless Avenger, which is arguably very situational, particularly if we're not a Polearm Master. And Polearm Master Vengeance Paladin is vicious. Relentless Avenger really synergizes well with it. There's some great builds online regarding a Polearm Master Paladin. We're not one of those. We're a Dexadin. So our benefits coming from Relentless Avenger at this point are unfortunately really not all that great, very situational. But yeah, if an enemy does like provoke an opportunity attack from you, you're going to be able to smack them and chase after them, which again adds another mobility option, which we really love because, yeah, our Dexadin is nimble. She is fast. She throws down the heat, and she can fly. She can teleport. And yeah, if someone provokes an opportunity attack her on her, she can smack them with a rapier and then dance right after them. So yeah, pretty badass cinematically, even though situationally, optimizationally. Yeah, I know. A lot of adverbs. My apologies. Okay, moving on to level 8. Um, okay, now I mentioned the Piercer feat before, right? And it is here at the level of 8. Ah, holy music plays. And we finally get the Piercer feat. And what does it give us? Well, first off, it gives us an 18 dexterity. And this is really sweet. We're getting an extra +1 to hit and damage. We're getting an extra +1 on our initiative rolls because we like to be fast to the start of combat so we can pop our buffs or maneuver to get into the enemy's face or just put them in a bad position in some way because we are crazy mobile, right? And it's going to add to our dexterity saving throws, right? And that's just from the +1 that we get for the ASI. Now, on the flip side, the Piercer optimizes our rapier. And we really love that because we're all about optimizing that rapier, right? I mean, we're not like going 100% to the hilt on rapier optimization, but this is a main feature of our build. We want our rapier to sing. And Piercer adds a bit of like sizzle to the sing, right? It gives us one reroll on a damage roll, and this is not great, but we've all been there where you hit a foe and boom, you come up a big fat one, right? And you're like, man, that sucks. I could have done so much more damage against this dude, but yeah, now I had to roll a big fat one. The dice gods hate me, and in particular, if you're rolling in a virtual tabletop environment, you're not even like physically rolling. You're like you're entrusting your rolls to a machine, to a computer, and you're like, man, you screwed me, Ghost in the Machine. F you. But no. What we can say to the Ghost in the Machine now is, I'm going to reroll, and you're going to have to make me roll a 1 again to make me feel bad. Because even if I roll a 2, I did better, right? But I could roll an 8, and that's a huge swing in damage. And yeah, it's not like seriously badass as far as like heavy damage. It's not anywhere near as punchy as what you can do with like Great Weapon Master if you're wielding a heavy weapon, for example. But it does provide some extra edge to your rapier. Now, the other aspect of Piercer I really like for this build, and I know it's just an extra little bit, but what this little bit does is it adds to the explosiveness of our already beautiful Nova critical strikes. It adds just one more card onto the house of cards that we have built to create this glory that is the optimization of the Nova crit with a rapier. And what is that? It adds 1 die 8 of damage anytime you crit with a rapier, right? So now our Nova criticals are going to have not just 2 die 8 from the rapier, it's going to have 3 die 8. And then we can add up to, let's see, we are level 8, so we have level 2 paladin spells, math. So we can add 8 die 8 from a smite against a fiend or an undead for a total of 11 die 8, which is nearly 50 average damage all by itself, right? That's just insane. But I mean, think of it another way. You just got the ability that barbarians get at level 9 at level 8 with your rapier. And so even when you are out, when you are dry on smites, you're going to get that extra sing whenever you crit with your rapier. And we're all about this sing, right? So yeah. So we are taking Piercer, and even though it is not the most optimal feat in the world, it is optimal to us because of that lovely, lovely word, synergy. And we have just created this wonderful synergy with our kill switch in the form of Radiant Soul, in the form of our Oath of Vengeance, or Oath of Enmity, I can't say that right. and on top of all the other beautiful things we can do as a paladin. Okay, so enough said about Piercer. Moving on to level 9, we get our third level spells, and they are so delicious, right? At level 9. We get haste, which is just glorious because we want mobility. We want to be able to race across the battlefield and be a threat. We want mobility as our ranged weapon for this character because our arrow is the shining tip of our rapier blasting through the enemy's defenses, right? And what does haste do? It puts us on a launch pad. It doubles our speed. It gives us a hasted action, which we can use for an extra attack, or we can use it to dash, which also adds to our mobility, which means that now our 60 feet of movement can be 120, and whoa, holy cow, boom, you are suddenly in somebody's face when they didn't expect you to be there. And honestly, if you really need to get somewhere, you can hasted action dash. And then if you didn't cast haste this round, if you're on a round where you didn't cast haste, you can misty step. So you can cover up to 150 feet. I don't know not very many battlefields I see are really like going to be inhibiting you in this way. So you are a seriously mobile badass when you combine your spells and the potential for flying from Protector Azamar. So haste is a big deal. Now haste is also buffs your defenses. It gives you +2 to your armor class and gives you advantage on dexterity saves, all of which are really going to help you out. The caveat for haste is it does come at a cost. If it goes down, if some guy casts Dispel Magic on you, for example, you lose a whole turn, which really sucks. Or if you lose concentration, which is still a possibility, even though you're +5 on your concentration checks at this time. So if you're using haste, be judicious. I mean, may not be the best idea to cast haste in the midst of a boatload of casters, for example. And don't get me wrong, I've totally done that. Yeah, been burned, but don't do it, please. Don't be like me. Don't be like have some caster cast Dispel Magic on you when you have haste. Now, if there are casters, you can kind of mitigate it by running around corners and getting yourself out of their line of sight. So there are some tweaks you can do to your movement while you cast haste to try and prevent getting nuked with the Dispel Magic. But yeah, you've got to be on your toes about it. So a little asterisk there, word of caution when it comes to haste. So yes, haste is so lovely. Just to talk about one other spell at this level. Spirit Shroud is also a very good buff. It comes at a bonus action. It buffs your damage and it limits the bad guy's mobility around you. I'm not as glorified. I am not as excited about Spirit Shroud as I am about haste for this particular build because I'm really loving the mobility, but there might be some situations where you really just want Spirit Shroud instead. So I'm just going to throw it out there as an asterisk. It's not one of the spells you get for your Oath of Vengeance, but it is a spell that you get access to now as a paladin thanks to Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, and I would be remiss if I did not mention it. So those are the high points for level 9. Level 10, you get your Aura of Courage, which makes your allies even happier. Yay, we have a Aura of Courage. Now, if we're close to the Paladin, or if we are the Paladin, we can just say bye-bye to those nasty fear effects that we all don't like. And that's basically what I'll say for level 10. Level 11. Your attacks get this really sweet benefit from improved Divine Smite. Now, every single one of those attacks that you can do, and you can do a lot, not as many as a fighter, but because of our Nova Crit capability and our crit or kill bonus action attack capability, we can have as many as 3 attacks on a combat round where we aren't casting haste. Or if we are casting haste, we can have as many as 4, which is actually pretty darn good. I mean, we're not we're not a fighter. We're not, getting 6 attacks on an action surge, but we're a paladin. We can smite, so we're quick. We can get some pretty damn good consistent attacks and flurry, I guess in a sense, up to 4, which is no joke. So yeah, and we're adding 1d8 radiant damage now to each one of those attacks, no matter what. Boom. Shiny rapier just got a little bit shinier, right? And so did our kill switch. So adding Radiant Soul plus Oath of Enmity and making all of our attacks, we're going to be doing a lot more damage. In total, for our Nova Crit at level 11, if we land every strike and we have haste active, we're going to be doing 11 die 8 plus 23 die 8 plus 35 damage, and this does not include any buffs from magical items. And this averages out to 190 damage when we're taking into account the extra die 8 from Piercer and the 1 reroll on one of your piercing damage strikes, which you'll probably end up doing with that massive flurry of attacks. All with a little rapier. I mean, is this anime or what? Brutal. I am just so loving this notion of this Dexadin just ripping through a big bad with this potential here. I mean, just a little rapier, but ooh, some big big damn holes blown into the bad's hit point totals. Yeah, I don't know. How do you feel? I feel happy. I mean, and don't get me wrong. If I am playing with a great weapon fighter paladin and I'm a rapier wielder like this, I'm like, hey, let's double up the badass on this guy. It's not one of those questions of, if or. It's a question of and but. I mean, how effed does the bad feel if they're facing that combination of threat? And this one in the package of, our little, maybe 110-pound, flying Azamar. I just love it. I love it. I'm feeling the mojo here. Okay, so moving on to level 12. We get another ASI bump, and we finally get to Dexterity 20, and we are very, very happy. What does this do for us? Well, it opens up studded leather armor as a really good option, the same level of option as half plate. And we can now also leverage our dexterity to be relatively stealthy. I mean, I don't know. I don't think we have a stealth skill, but because we have a high dexterity and light armor, we can be at the front close to the rogue, backing him up, or her up, or they up. So this kind of adds to the field of play for our mobile, fast, heavy strike little dudette here. And on top of all that, we get all the nice things like an additional +1 to hit and damage. Our initiative now is +5, so we come that closer to the top of the order where we can deploy our fast little Dexadin that much faster, gaining that extra action economy edge. Our dexterity saving throw has now been bumped to +8 when we include our Aura of Protection, which is pretty darn good. And our base weapon damage now bumps to 2 die 8 +7 with a rapier, and that does not include any kind of magic item type buffs. So we are majorly in the realm of sweetness here at level 12. Level 13 gives us some goodies in the form of some nice spells, Banishment and Dimension Door. Banishment is another situationally very good spell. It is a charisma save, so it's one of those things that can let you take out a serious threat off the battlefield. Just banishing, bye-bye, see you later. And then concentrate, and then they're gone. Now, it is concentration, and it is an action, so it's something that you'll want to choose judiciously. But when you do use it, and you use it effectively, you'll be like, yeah, I just took that fire giant out of the combat. See ya. Um, Dimension Door. Yet another big star gleaming in our mobility suite of bamfing and jumping and springing and flying and racing across the battlefield. In this case, 500 feet of movement, and I think you guys are going to have to correct me. I think you can take a buddy with you. Now, it is an action, but yeah, when you need 500 feet of movement, you need it. So, boom, Dimension Door. Pretty badass. Now, also at this level, and I didn't really talk much about mounted combat earlier, but the Paladin Steed is an awesome thing. And at level 5, you get access to a regular steed, which is also going to give you more mobility options, particularly when you're out in the field. And, being an adventurer, you're probably going to be out in the field at least 20% of your adventuring time, unless you're in some kind of, giant dungeon environment, which can happen. I mean, it's been known to happen. But still, you get access to the steed, and it is yet another awesome mobility option. And at this level, you get access to the Pegasus. And the Pegasus has 90 feet of movement. So what happens if you have your glorious Pegasus steed and you cast the haste spell? Because of the wonderful thing that is shared spells with your mounts, your Pegasus now has a speed of 180. 100 and frickin' 80. Your mount in the directed control type of control with a mount using the mounted combat rules can use its action to dash. That turns your 180 into 300. And because it is, 360. And because your mount is hasted, it has a hasted action. And so, yeah, you can really, 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 really move. You can use your bamfs with your mount, so you can Misty Step, boom, 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 boom. Of course, the mount is more fragile than you at this level, so there are some caveats, some asterisks, some quid pro quos that you may need to consider for using your mount. But sweetness on mobility, and yeah, the ability to streak in and out of combat on the mount with your rapier, with your gleaming, sharp, sparkling, badass, flurrying rapier is, serious. That turns you into a serious threat that can move in, pounce, get the hell out, deliver your nasty damage, and have the added benefit of having that extra layer of security just by moving out is definitely something worth noting at level 13. Level 14 gives us cleansing touch, which is good if situational debuff. You can remove magical effects, bad magical effects from your allies, and this can situationally be very helpful. Adds to your off healer type suite, which I will mention. 70 hit points of lay on hands at this level, 14 hit points of healing hands, all without spells, plus cleansing touch. Good things to have as a party member in your back pocket if you guys run out, or if people start dropping from bad effects or just hit point loss in general. Moving on to level 15, and I know we're blowing through here quick, but I spent a lot of time in the setup. 15 is just so delicious. We are getting the added rider to our Oath of Enmity. That is Soul of Vengeance. And what does Soul of Vengeance do for us? It gives us, I want to think of it for this character as Rapier Retribution against your sworn enemy. It is divine justice as a retort. And in game terms, what is this? But it allows you, when your Oath of Enmity target makes an attack, and it can be against you or against anybody, one of your allies, a rat on the floor, some offensive mosquito, I don't know. But anything that your sworn, chosen beat stick here decides to throw out against anybody is going to provoke a reaction attack from you, from your Oath of Enmity. And what does this do? This adds further to our action economy, increasing the maximum number of potential attacks for us on a round to 5. Now, fighters aren't jealous, but whoa. Everyone else is. I mean, holy cow. We can do up to 5 attacks with improved Divine Smite, and with Divine Smite, with our glorious Nova Crit, with our wonderful Radiant Soul, which is now adding 15 damage to a strike, once on each of your turns. Oh boy. I mean, just think of all the possibilities. And I just love the idea of you are face to face with your sworn foe. Your eyes are brimming, exploding with this righteous anger. They dare to attack you, and then wham, your rapier comes right back around for another strike. At advantage, may I add. Yeah, level 15 is a sweet level for you. And for those of us who choose this beautiful, glorious Dexadin at this point. Moving on to level 16, we get another ASI, and we choose Charisma. Now, I want to say a word here about the mobility feat. The mobility feat would be the crowning jewel in our glorious suite of mobile stuffs. But for me, I really want Charisma here at this level. I want the added buffs to my saves and my ally saves, and I'm really looking ahead to level 18 when my aura gets oh so much bigger and covers like a huge portion of the battlefield, so I can share all my goodies with all my friends and leverage that mobility to put that aura in a good place. So Charisma goes to 18. We get +4 on all our saves, and so do our allies, so long as they are in our aura, and that is just so sweet, so beautiful, and we are loving it. At level 17, we get 5th level spells, and as a Vengeance Paladin, we get Hold Monster, which we can now use the beautiful paralysis gifted to us by Hold Person against pretty much anything. And again, all the situational caveats and riders to that go hand in hand, but when you use it effectively, it is just so beautiful. In addition to that, we get this wonderful, I think it's wonderful, scrying ability. I mean, if you are a Vengeance Paladin and you have a sworn foe that you have encountered and yet they have escaped and you know something about them, you say, for example, you have maybe a piece of their hair, or your bard is clever enough with their hands to draw this beautiful villainous painting of them. You can now scry on them, that you can send this magical sensor out through the ether to spy on them, to find out where they are and what they're doing. You can collude with your wizard and his familiar, Witch's Crow, to teleport on them and pounce on them as a party due to all of your combined snooping and spellcraft. I just really like this notion of a paladin that can do this. As a Vengeance Paladin in particular, it adds sting to the scorpion stinger that is Vengeance, that we like to sting our foes with. Yes. So yes, Hold Monster and Scrying, wonderful things that we get. And also worth mentioning that now we have a Charisma of 18, so our saves, it's a little bit more difficult to save against our spells, so a little bit more juicy synergy with our Dexadin build here, our Stab and Smite Gish. It's also worth mentioning that we did talk about Spirit Shroud earlier, and now we can upcast Spirit Shroud to level 5, which gives us an extra 2 die 8. And we can choose Radiant Damage, because that's very thematic. We're not benefiting from the beautiful mobility of haste when we use Spirit Shroud, but Spirit Shroud does get that extra oomph. And as a caveat, it's worth noting that if you get a delicious potion of speed, you can combine these two effects. So watch out, bad guys. The heat is coming. One other spell mentioning. Sorry. Yeah. So one other spell worth mentioning at this level is the delicious Branding Smite spell. Branding Smite deals heavy, and we haven't really talked about smite spells because a lot of times we're kind of maybe going to be wanting to use like other things that we can concentrate on, or we're relying on our just delicious pure paladin divine smites instead. But branding smite deserves a special mention. It's kind of like a soft power word kill in combination with some serious extra damage. You get this wonderful 5 die 10 additional damage, and if you bring the foe below 50 hit points with your strike, or they were already below 50 hit points, when you hit them, you banish them. Boom, gone. No save, no nothing, just done. You've knocked 50 hit points off one of your potential foes, and you have taken them out of combat as long as you concentrate. This wonderful rider can be added to your melee attacks or even a ranged attack. So, and I haven't talked too much about the range capability of this character because your main focus as a Dexadin is your rapier and your smite, and we have optimized the living daylights out of that. But if you're using a longbow, you still get the benefits of the piercer feat, and now you can branding smite on top of that. And that gives you some pretty decent range damage and enemy takedown capabilities with a bow. You're going to primarily be leaning into your rapier and your extra mobility, but that added option is something that is situationally really, really beautiful. And yeah, I would be remiss to leave it out. At level 18, we get our wonderful expanded auras that we were talking about. Now your aura of protection and all your other auras, your aura of courage, goes out to 30 feet, and this is a big chunk of the battlefield for you. So you are really helping your allies out, and you're helping yourself out. And I mean, that is just good on top of good. This is delicious. Level 18 is a really, really delicious level for you. And I'm going to hold off the Nova Crit assessment. I mean, in my blog, I did the Nova Crit assessment for level 18, but we're gonna hold off on that for level 20. So finishing off, and we have arrived at the end here. Finishing off at level 19 and 20, we get a 20 charisma, and that buffs our beautiful aura. That gives us and our allies all those wonderful bonuses to saves. And in addition to that, we get this glorious capstone of Avenging Angel. And what happens when we use this capstone, which lasts for an entire hour? We sprout wings, real wings this time. And these wings bear us aloft at a flight speed of 60, which if we cast haste goes to 120. And so we can really now move across the battlefield. All of our mobility features coming from this Oath of Vengeance Paladin, this light dexterity build with high initiative, with a fast rapier that chooses her spells and class features wisely for using that mobility, have now just gotten so much better. And then on top of that, we get on top of that wonderful glorious capstone, we get this amazing cherry that is this fear aura that surrounds us and goes out, I think, Brain, I think it's to a range of 30 feet. You're going to have to correct me if I'm wrong, but even so. And what this requires your enemies to do who are not immune to fear, and there are still many enemies that you can encounter at this level that are not immune to fear, is it forces them to make a saving throw against your spell save DC, which is now enhanced by your 20 charisma, or succumb to fright and be inhibited by the frightened condition, and an additional rider that goes along with that fright that you and your allies are now at advantage. Yes, advantage to hit all of the creatures that succumb to your aura. There's only one saving throw for this effect. It lasts 1 minute. This is a really, really subtle yet potent crowd control capability for you and your allies that debuffs your foes and seriously buffs the capability of you and your allies, all coming from your glorious wings of righteous vengeance. And this is a fitting capstone. But at level 20, we would be remiss if we did not also mention the capability of your Nova Critical Strike. And at this point, without the enhancement of any magical weapons, any other magical enhancements, for a Nova Crit round in which you have triggered your Oath of Enmity, which now includes your Soul of Vengeance, in which you perform a critical strike and get the extra bonus action attack from Great Weapon Master, and in which you smite for all of the strikes, you are going to be doing an average, well, a total damage set of 11 die 8. This includes the wonderful adds from Piercer, plus 30 die 8 from all of your glorious smites, plus 48, for a total of 236 added damage on your on turn. And then for Soul of Vengeance, you're going to do your reaction attack for another 7 die 8 plus 27 for an additional 59 damage, totaling 294 with your little amazing rapier. And yeah, this is near the top of some of the Nova builds. There are certainly Nova builds that stack classes together and do other things that can surpass this. Certainly your Great Weapon Master and Polearm Master Oath of Vengeance Paladins are also doing serious and severe damage at this level. And certainly your heavy weapon fighters also are going to be doing some serious damage. But you're right up there in that pantheon of folks who are delivering the extreme heat, and you are doing it all with a rapier. And this is the glory of this build. This is the beauty. This is why at level 20, choirs of angels and maybe your allies too will sing your praise, because not only are we doing this, but we are also helping our friends. We are also standing there beside the barbarian or the fighter or the other paladin in your party and becoming that combined force for destruction of your enemies. And so I'm going to go ahead and end this. I'm going to pull up. I've been remiss. I don't have the chat on my computer, so I don't see if... Oop, I have to turn on my cell phone for this. I don't see if any of you have stated anything in the chat, or if anyone's actually paying attention. But if anyone has, thank you for joining me. I hope this build guide has been helpful to you. I'm going to go ahead and post this on YouTube for just longevity if anyone's interested in seeing my particular Dexadin build here. And let's go ahead and I'm going to pull up Twitch and see if anybody is online. Anybody asking questions? Let's look at my channel. Sorry. And so, oh, yeah, we have one viewer live. And yeah, I know, not a lot. Dungeon Master Graham. Okay, hold on. Yeah. Mea culpa. I'm looking through my fields right now. There we go. Okay, yeah. So no one has dropped into chat. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and drop the link into chat after I'm done with this video. Thank you so much for joining me, those of you who have, both on YouTube and on Twitch. If you want to join me on Twitch, I am Fantasy Scribbler, and I'm going to go ahead and drop the link on the YouTube video. If you want to join me on WordPress, I am at Scribbler's Fantastical Workshop, and I'm pretty sure, yeah, my YouTube is under just my real name, which is Robert Finet. So thank you guys for joining me. This has been a wonderful, wonderful time for me talking about this Dexadin build.